All right, Chris, here it is. We will talk about this. Maybe we'll start with this actually. Early voting has already started.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, I actually have it up here. Um, Minnesota started on the 20th, South Dakota, Virginia, Vermont. Tomorrow, Illinois. So we think of the election as like election day, but really for some places it's like a month. So what do you expect to see? Do you think there will be more Republicans in this cycle that will start to do what has traditionally been Democrats, which is early voting? Do you think there's more of a push for that among the Republican Party now?
I'm going to take you on the Wayback Machine. So, um, I did one of the first races with early voting back in the late, I think was it 88 or 90? And
Okay.
it was Washington State had early voting. And as a consultant, it fucked everybody up because we didn't understand how or when. We were guessing about how and when people voted. And, kind of what we know now is that for the most part, there's always an exception. If somebody's listening, say, well, in this one race, but it looks like a U. And so if you would chart it out on an XY graph, it would look like a U. There was this really high, you get your ballot, you fill it out, you send it in, and then it goes down, and then it ramps up towards election day, the last week. It was originally thought, and so we had to figure that out because we were just kind of guessing, and we did guess kind of right that the most partisan people were going to vote first. But we thought it was going to be a smaller line and then a gradual line up to election day, and it's not. It kind of drops off in the middle for about 3-4 weeks, and the last week it kind of goes in.
Right.
And because people are either procrastinating a little bit, or they're generally undecided, and a lot of the ballots, like for instance, to get the California ballot, it's usually like 16 fucking pages, and you're kind of like,
Right.
and so that's kind of a little off-putting. So people put it by. For campaigns, it means persuasion is a really difficult thing to calculate. Where do you spend your money? How much? And what kind of voter contact? Now, traditionally, it was started out in a progressive state, in Washington State, in a good government progressive state, is making things easier. We know a couple things about early voting and no excuse voting by mail, is that it actually tends to retard a little bit actual turnout. And because what happens is you got a ballot, I'm going to vote, and then you kind of forget about it, and you go, oh, fuck it.
Right.
And because and that tends to be less in presidentials. It is more of a thing in non-presidential years. But what happened was, especially in states like Florida, all this early voting became laws, and so Republicans said, fuck it, let's get good at this. And so they were really good at doing early voting stuff. And so literally what would happen, and a lot of this has to do with changing demographics of the parties too, is that poor people, lower down education, lower down economic scale, you would vote on election day or closer to election day, but all the rich college educated people would vote early. And now that those kind of things have switched, you find that Democrats vote more early and Republicans vote later. And what happened in 2020 was Trump saying, don't vote by mail, don't vote early because it's all a ripoff, it's all crime. And that really hurt that. I mean, there's no doubt that cost the Republicans 2 Senate seats in Georgia.
Yeah.
There were I think there were 200,000 voters that didn't kind of go from the general to the runoff.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a thought.
With those 200,000, would they have covered the differential for Ossoff and Warnock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now you can just say that that's the normal fall off between a presidential, but it also looks like that those votes were uniquely Republican. And so really for the campaigns, for the Harris campaign and Trump campaign right now, is that what resources are we going to spend where on who's deciding? And it may be that in Pennsylvania, your polling, your strategy says that voters are going to decide late. In Wisconsin, it might be, or they're going to decide a little earlier. And But what you're moving around is moving around millions of dollars and thousands of TV and radio and digital spots, and I'm not even going to get into mail. And so, it's like the 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle.
Hmm.
It's not hard, but a lot of times I've been in campaigns where you would make a mistake that you go, how the fuck did we do that? That you forget about something. You forget, like, what do you mean the mail didn't go out then? It was supposed to go out last week, and you're on the clock. I mean, you can't say, you can't hit pause on this thing. I mean, it's going forward.
I'm wondering if it's also a huge impact for when you're trying to figure out how to mobilize at a grassroots, like getting certain people to the polls and stuff like that. Do you allocate those resources? How do you allocate those resources based on geographic location, where some people are more inclined to mail it in um, or to have already voted?
Yeah,
And
I
it's
will say, so on that kind of stuff, I am a big non-believer in grassroots and presidential campaigns.
mm,
And I'll move my microphone here a little bit. And the reason I'm not, because if you are not aware or not excited by Trump Biden or Trump Harris, I'm not going to motivate, like some jerk off with a T-shirt and a clipboard isn't going to motivate you to go out and vote.
right,
Um,
right.
but what is important is, frankly, nursing homes
Mm,
and, shut-ins and hospital things, or people that,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and Republicans always say, oh, that's vote ballot harvesting, and in some cases it may be, but that kind of stuff where you need to bank votes, that becomes really important.
Yeah.
I've always thought that the buses and going again, if you're not going to vote for Trump Harris, like some unctuous dude with a clipboard isn't going to convince me knocking on my door at 6 o'clock at night.
Right, right.
What is interesting is that both presidential campaigns, the Hillary campaign, famously the Romney campaign, and famously the Obama campaign, had these very sophisticated get out the vote operations. The Romney campaign had one called Orca, and it didn't work. It was a total fucking disaster. And article you can type in Romney Orca like the whale and get that. And there's also, by the way, a really interesting study. I want to say it was by David Shore, the pollster, the Democratic pollster, that Obama's get out the vote operation actually cost them votes because
Oh.
people found the constant nagging, for lack of my word,
Hmm.
off-putting,
Hmm.
and that there were other things that were going on there. But he's got this really interesting statistical regression if you want to get into the deep weeds on something, or if you have trouble sleeping. But if you're a political scientist, it's pretty interesting, and it does make some sense. By the way, which also makes him very unpopular in some circles, because there are people that you will see on TV that have made a career and a small fortune on being get out the vote people and grassroots people,
Right.
and and you're pissing on somebody's livelihood, and you
There's
don't
so
want
many
to do it.
cottage industries around elections. Everybody's got a little hand in the kitty.
Right, mentor, peer, whatever. Arthur Finkelstein used to call get out the vote stuff. He used to call it the rainmakers, and that the rainmakers would come into your town and say, "I'm going to make the rain," and
Right.
sometimes it would rain and sometimes it wouldn't. And when it rained, you say, "See, I did it."
Right.
And when it didn't, you said, "Well, you didn't pay me enough, or it was,
You didn't believe enough.
you didn't believe enough." Right, faith healer. Right, they're faith healers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So,
I remember in 2020, I was living in Vietnam, and I remember in the consulate, they there was a pretty overt sign, and I was on an email list as well through the State Department for citizens abroad, and there were a lot of emails. There was a lot about voting as a citizen abroad, and I remember reading an article in 2020 that so many now, this like digital nomad life, right? You can kind of live and work
yeah.
anywhere, that the foreign citizens voting in embassies and consulates around the world, and included in that would be also military that are stationed overseas,
Mhm.
is becoming a large enough percentage where it could eventually be a blind spot that actually upends an election. Like people don't see it, because they're not pulling it, they're not looking for it, but it's becoming a percentage that's growing, that suddenly you're gonna have a swing, and there's gonna be a almost like a unforeseen um outcome like 2016, where people are like, how the hell did that happen? And you're like, oh, it was the overseas vote of citizens. I thought that was quite interesting. I don't know if we're actually there, but
Well,
it's something people don't think about normally.
in 2000 with Bush Gore in Florida, the Democrat lawyers tried to get certain military ballots uncounted, and
Oh,
because there was a dispute in the law, is it when they arrived, when they were postmarked, when they were sent, and so if you're foreign, again, if you're foreign and you're mailing something, I mean, foreign mail's foreign mail.
for
Um,
sure. Yeah,
and but I believe that the military stuff is all bagged and sent. But I remember it was,
yeah.
and honestly, I can't remember the details of it. But because that race was so close, um, that wasn't. Even though I will say campaigns generally know how those votes are going to go.
Right.
Um,
Right.
you know, they,
Demographically, the military is also split among the college and non-college, the enlisted and
yeah,
and officer corps.
you can model them, and
Yeah.
and generally, what I think the rule has been is that the military votes generally break like 3-2 for the Republican generally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Makes
mean, it goes
sense.
up and it goes down.
The big one now is interesting is just, I think, maybe that digital nomad thing of like
Yeah,
more and more young college educated people are living in Bali or in
yeah,
Portugal, and they're doing marketing for some company, making good money, and you don't think about them. Um, but and truthfully, they're probably not thinking about it either. So maybe it just isn't a big deal right now. So in this election, then, do you think there will be the traditional, what's it called, the red mirage or the blue whatever, where it's like the early voting and the mail in voting stuff that's counted later on election day? Do you think that there will be a big shift like that, or do you see now? I mean, Trump has even said, I saw a clip where he said you should vote twice, mail in your ballot, and then also show up on a crime, by the
yeah.
way.
A crime.
But whatever. Um, do you think more Republicans now, can, based on what you said, it's always been kind of the higher earning, higher educated that have taken advantage of this early voting and mail-in voting, that has shifted where that demographics alliances lie. But do you think there'll be a push now after 2020 where more Republicans will vote early?
Yeah, I think it'll probably revert to the mean.
Mm,
Previously before Trump, knocking it down. I mean, I think
okay.
it is irony that one of the arguments for early voting and the no excuse absentee is because working people,
Mm,
couldn't take time off from work, and and frankly, the upper income, upper educated laptop class, they
right.
have fucking free time and they can make free time, and they're the one that use the services more. So
Right. Right.
it's so I often wonder if we would have that mechanism if we knew how it was going to turn out. I mean, probably.
Yeah.
Again, I, I'm for everybody voting and making it easier for voting. One of my clients, Michael Adams, who's the Secretary of State of Kentucky, who was called a voter suppressor until everybody realized is that what they were doing was making it easier and more accessible. And like LeBron and Hillary were attacking us, and then the Kentucky NAACP endorsed us because of making voting. It's like
Yeah.
people doing knee jerk shit.
Yeah.
But he's got a great phrase that he said: anything with elections, you need to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat.
Right.
And and that's a great phrase. And anything that needs to be done to do that. And again, I mean, we've
Yeah.
talked before, and I've talked ad nauseum about how hard it is to steal votes. Um,
Mm.
well, actually, it's easy to steal votes. How hard it is not to get caught.
Right. 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 That's it's a interesting point. A little add on to that. Have you heard about this mayor, Mayor Doug Denny, who Wausau mayor? I actually don't even see in this article where the hell Wausau is, but I'm guessing it's
Wisconsin,
somewhere. Either,
Wisconsin.
oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
It also sounds like something upstate New York, I thought. But
Could be, could be.
so in Wausau,
Wausau or Walsall? Walsall would be Wisconsin. Wausau might be upstate New York. Yeah.
Wausau, probably my horrible way of
Well,
pronouncing the word.
you're not from Wisconsin, so you're.
Yeah, I'm not a cheesehead.
You haven't been to the Elroy Cheese Festival as I have.
I haven't. No, I actually have had cheese curds though, so that makes me close.
Deep fried cheese curds at the Elroy Cheese Festival. I still think about them, like.
So does your heart.
Oh my god! Well, I was like really hungover, and it's like 10 o'clock in the morning with deep fried cheese curds, and I'm like, fuck yeah,
Hell yeah! So I need some sort of deep fried food to soak up this booze.
Yeah.
Have you seen? I guess yesterday, actually, the 24th. So it must have been Wisconsin because so the city clerk, they put out a drop box for ballots, a ballot drop box in front of City Hall, and after it was approved by the state Supreme Court, which if I recall right, I did read something about them approving it in Wisconsin. He's caught on surveillance wearing like a public works jacket. He dollied the Dropbox into his office. I don't know, whatever. We reached kind of like peak. Well, he issued an apology. It's election interference, technically, probably, but no charges are ever going to be filed. No charges are going to be filed. So what's going to prevent the next person from one-upping that, whatever? Why is it? I mean, at a very basic level, elections are about power. So if you can stop the votes in Tammany Hall and all this shit, it's always been around. But in this age of like massive surveillance and shit, what is the end game then if this kind of one-upsmanship keeps happening? Why don't we just go to some sort of like, here's my biometric and I can vote online? And it's, somebody will figure out a way to hack that shit, I'm sure. But
yeah, I mean, and I'm looking back at my quick bookshelf, and there's a book called.
Wait, I don't think I've ever told you, but Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is such a good movie.
It's one of my favorites. I think it's no, I can't find it. Yeah, no, it's such a great movie, and it's an incredible adaptation from the book because the book is this kind of. But it's
Here's an important question about spy books. Yeah. Who do you like better? What's the guy's name that wrote Tinker Tailor? He's got the French name that he goes by, but nobody here. Yeah. What's better, him or Graham Greene? Which books do you think are better?
I think Graham Greene.
I agree. He's got like a weird sensibility to him.
There is this kind of weird, and I do think Le Carre is kind of, because Greene has got this, who apparently was a jerk off.
Really?
Yeah, apparently he was dishonest and a womanizer and just kind of cheated on everybody. At the same time, he always pretended that he was this devout Catholic.
His book, the one about the woman who breaks off her affair because the guy's life is saved. Ah, man, you know what I'm talking about? That's like somewhat autobiographical, I read.
Yeah, but I think that what makes Greene, I think, better is that conflict, that personal conflict that clearly he was writing
Exactly.
By the way, this was the book I was thinking of, and it's going to be backwards, but it says Deliver the Vote by Tracy Campbell. And it says A History of Election Fraud in American Political Tradition from 1742 to 2004.
I feel like, honestly, the most interesting shit would be the early election fraud. I'm so curious what that was like.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. There's also a really good book, with Chris, I think his name is Chris Rose. He's out of Arizona. He wrote a book called The Fighting Bunch, which is one of these things that it reads like fiction, and it's in Tennessee, I believe, and it's about a group of there was a corrupt political boss in a small town, and it was a corrupt political party, and a bunch of veterans just back from World War II, Democrats and Republicans, essentially laid siege to the mayor's office in the town, and the police were called in, and there was shooting and fighting, and it's just like, it's like a fucking, it's like a fucking Tom Cruise movie. But they restored democracy to this little town. They you know, they
Yeah,
did
the
it for a
Fighting
whole,
Bunch.
yeah, really good.
Yeah,
And it's a true
the
story.
Battle of Athens and how
Georgia,
World
yeah.
War II veterans won the only successful armed rebellion since the Revolution.
Yeah. I mean,
Interesting.
it's like movie, you know, you want to see that movie. But yeah, but so,
Okay.
you know, all this stuff has been with us. And again, it's every year you'll see vote fraud. A lot of it is kind of unintentional.
Mm,
That people just kind of break the law. Oh, I thought I voted. I didn't vote. I wasn't registered. I had moved, or
right.
bullshit like that. But the intentional stuff is very easy to find. And the problem with manufacturing votes, if you're going to do that, if you're going to win an election, and I'm going to say Georgia, where Trump lost by, what was it, 11,000? He needed, what, 16,000 votes or 11,000 votes? What was it?
I just saw today it was 0.3% of the vote.
Okay, but that's probably what? That's probably,
Yeah, it was like 11,000
okay.
something
Let's
something
call
that
it
he said he
11,000
needed.
for argument's sake. You would need to know by election day, or you would need to know before election day or by election day exactly how many votes you needed to steal. If
Otherwise, it's
anybody,
for naught, right?
right. So if anybody can do that, good fucking luck. You shouldn't be wasting your time doing politics. You should be in Vegas doing odds.
Right.
But even beyond that, let's say you want to do that after, you would actually have to manufacture 11,000 votes, and which would mean filling out voting forms, figuring out some kind of they're touchscreen in Georgia. They touchscreen and it's a paper ballot, clips out. So you would have to have somebody on these touchscreens, but you would have to distribute the 11,000 across a wide area. So you would probably have to do it. If you did 100 per precinct, it's going to show up. So you would probably have to do maybe 20 or 30 for precinct. So 20, let's call it 10 per precinct. So you would need to have over 100 precincts where you did that, coordinate it, and have people corrupt enough to do that. Good fucking luck doing that in a day or two, and then not get caught. And so it's really difficult for it to happen. And that's the whole problem with vote fraud conspiracies. Most of its shit is pretty obvious. Now, the one I worked on a race, and Republicans always actually I've worked on two genuine vote fraud races. One which was stolen in the count, and one which was manufactured votes. And it was a state senate race in Philadelphia in 1990. Might have been 91. And there was Marks versus Stinson, and my candidate was Marks. And the election votes are coming in on election night. He's counting the votes, and it looks pretty good for Marks. And all of a sudden, in the Democratic ward leader's home precinct, home ward, there's this fucking tranche of votes that you kind of go, like, how come people are voting in the stupid or the stupid state senate race at a higher percentage rate than they did in the fucking presidential? And you kind of go, okay, right? And then you start looking at the votes, and like you start looking at when you sign the registration book to go in, and you look at the signatures, and like every signature is the same in the same pen and the same handwriting, and you kind of go, all right, So it took a judge about, it took the DA and the judge about 2 fucking seconds, or I think it was the AG or the U.S. attorney or something. But anyway, it took them about 2 seconds to go guilty.
So what did they do in the election of that? Were they able to? Did they hold like a special election after that, or did they just throw out votes?
They just threw out the votes, and literally they went through every vote, and they saw if it was a legitimate vote or not vote. And like a lot of the people were dead. A lot of them were just kind of manufactured stuff. It was all really obvious and transparent. They just discounted those votes, and I think Marks won by a few hundred votes.
Wow.
But then actually went on to lose his reelect. But it was, but that's a famous one.
So I take it then you think it's insane for the House of Representatives right now to hold up the funding bill for the SAVE Act. Is that, am I right in that assumption that the SAVE Act is unnecessary? It's already illegal for non-citizens to vote in the United States. At federal, I do know that certain jurisdictions, certain municipal districts have allowed legal residents, so green card holders, to vote in citywide elections, which based on the law of the United States, is their prerogative. But for federal elections, for federal positions, you can't vote as a non-citizen. So it seems like much ado about nothing. Democrats say that this isn't happening, and when it is, we're catching it, and it's like
Yeah.
less than 1/10%. So,
Yeah.
um,
In a lot of ways, the SAVE Act is kind of like passing a gun law, make it illegal to shoot somebody with a fucking gun. It's like, yeah, we know
right,
it's illegal. There's rules in and it's like, and nothing's going to stop you if you want to do it. There is
right.
an interesting academic study, and I think if you type in Minnesota vote fraud historic or something, you can see it. And it was a bunch of academics, and they looked at the state of Minnesota, and they did a survey after they asked people, "Did you vote in the election?" And Minnesota has pretty loose election laws, or they used to have pretty loose election laws. And did you vote in this election? And they basically found a bunch of non-citizens voted, and then when they asked them again, and they asked them by follow-up by language, in native language, telephone calls, did you vote illegally? It was, did you vote? And people said, yeah, I voted. And when you did the follow-up, they also said they voted. And so there is reason to believe, and they've protected the data, but it looks like it's real legit. Protected, and like, we're not going to go get the FBI to find these people, But it looks like that what it is that people who are not citizens, who were not entitled to vote, who may have voted in a municipal election because they could, went in and voted in the presidential or voted in a Senate race. And so when you had Al Franken win by a couple hundred votes, when you look at the percentages of it, it was probably like, I want to say it was like 4,000 votes that were probably non-citizens. I think the modeling was like 3 to 12,000 or 3 to 15,000 or something. So you could make that case. At the same time, you have to look at intent too. I mean, should non? I mean, and I don't blame somebody non-citizen who decided to vote. They want to be American, do their patriotic duty. Fuck you, let's go vote. What it really is incompetent. People that are managing the elections, because when they came in, they should have said, Giuseppe Matola. It's like, we don't see you on the list here. Do you have any ID? Can you get that? Well, no, I'm not. Here's my green card. I'm not like, well, you can't vote. I mean, it should have been that simple.
Do we know if their vote was counted? Because
Yeah.
many counts are thrown out.
Yeah. No. Apparently, these were counted, which was part of the thing, and it had to do. And I believe since the state of Minnesota since kind of fixed that issue. But again, but it's. And again, it's a study. It is not a hard and proven case. It's an academic study, but it makes kind of sense that this kind of happened. But again, these are kind of anomalies, and it wasn't like the Franken campaign decided we need 2,432 votes. This is just some kind of thing, and also we don't know how they voted. We assume that the non-citizens voted, for Al Franken.
100%, right?
Yeah.
And the other aspect of this is passing the SAVE Act would not have fucking prevented that.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's if they're going to do it, they're going to, just like you said, if you're going to shoot somebody with a gun, making it illegal, somebody's still going to shoot somebody with a gun.
Yeah, we're going to make it really illegal now. Yeah.
Right. We mean it this time, people. Okay, yeah, no, I mean, listen, I need to look at what the current standing is of the SAVE Act and the funding bill.
Stupid.
Yeah. All right, so let's do a quick flip. So we're talking about some elections. Actually, while we're on this thing about election interference and crime a little bit, did you see that the organizers of the Trump train that interfered with the Biden campaign election bus in Texas were convicted in Austin this week? I think a $40,000 restitution. I don't think any jail time from what I saw.
Good.
Maybe a suspended sentence. I don't know, but some sort of penalty. They actually, though, the organizers are associated with a church here in Texas, a rather large church. So I'm guessing it will be. I'm sure your your 10% or whatever it is that's you're supposed to tithe will go. Okay, so a couple big pieces of news that I think are interesting. Um, this is my favorite story. The last one, actually, let's do the sad one first. What's your take on the future political career of the governor of Missouri for allowing a potentially and highly likely innocent person to be executed this week?
No
Um,
matter. I don't
no,
think.
none, huh? I've actually seen a growing, I mean, again, it could be my own bubble, I guess, but I've seen like a growing chorus of Missourians on like X and that
Yeah.
are kind of in shock that I don't think people realize A, that the Supreme Court wouldn't stay the execution of an innocent person simply because, oh, well, the law. Um, and that the governor allowed it to proceed, considering that the prosecuting office said that they thought it should be stayed. I can run through the list of everyone who said that
Yeah.
it should be
I
stayed, but
mean,
the
it doesn't.
victim's family said give him life,
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Again, I looked at the case really briefly this morning. I mean,
The DNA didn't match,
well, apparently the part of it was pre-DNA, and part of the case was kind of a mess. I mean,
but shouldn't a
and,
standard of staying in an execution, if a case is a
yeah.
mess and the prosecutor says, we think this
Well, the
deserves a
prosecutors also kind of ran for Congress based upon his progressive.
got it.
I
Yeah.
mean, the prosecutor was not, he wasn't prosecuting the Clutter murders in, Kansas.
It wasn't altruism, you're saying.
Yeah,
There
I
was
mean,
some
it was
self-interest in
politically,
there.
yeah, and but yeah, I mean, but I don't think it's not going to matter for him because he's not going to be a national figure, but maybe he's a
Okay.
Senate figure, and Missouri's still overwhelmingly pro-death penalty,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so I don't think that there's a long-term repercussion. But actually, I do think what's interesting is that I read a thing today about Democrats kind of writing off Montana and looking at Florida and Texas. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that is kind of interesting. I've heard Montana's gone.
Hmm.
Tester has just outlived his usefulness, and the old phrase we used to use: "Too liberal for too long." Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but interesting Florida Texas play. If you look at the public polls, Allred is within a couple.
Hmm.
And if you look at the Florida polls, I don't even know who she is. She's a nothing candidate. She's a C-level candidate.
Yeah.
But Scott is up and down unpopular. The If you're the Democrats, it kind of creates a really interesting scenario because you would need a seat. You would need one of those to maintain control of the Senate,
Yeah.
and also to play meaningful there in the next 5 weeks, because that's what we're talking about. You're probably talking about sinking $40-50 million in
Yeah.
there. And I can tell you at this stage that $40-50 million will not be spent well. It will have an impact,
Hmm.
but it's not like $50 million you're spending last May, you can actually have some effect on it. This is throwing shit
Right.
at the wall. And so, is this going to be another case of, another $50 million in Texas coming away with nothing? Or are they
Hmm.
better to save the money, and push it for another cycle? But
Hmm.
that never happens, even though like logic says that, because you don't want to be who's the head of the Democratic Senate committee now? Is it Schumer? No.
No, no, no. Yeah, I was reading something by this guy.
Anyway, but you don't want to be that person when Allred loses by 0.5% of the vote, and you were the
Yeah.
motherfucker that didn't invest in the race. I mean, I've had,
Right.
I've been on sides of that where I've lost by a few thousand votes or by half a point, and the national
Yeah.
parties had kind of pulled out of the race because they didn't believe in it. And I can assure you, if you're Allred, you will carry that grudge to your fucking grave. Um,
Totally. Totally.
so
And in a way, spending ungodly amounts of money is a way of covering your own ass in that situation,
yeah,
right? Like we poured everything we had into it. You know what I mean?
and your other people, it's other
It's
people's money
Gary
too.
Peters from Michigan that's leading
Yeah,
the DSCC. Yeah.
yeah, and it's other people's money too. So
Right. Right.
I mean,
So I read today actually that the Senate GOP, they actually think they've got Ohio as well. They think Sherrod Brown's out. I think there's an interesting article. I think it's an NPR article that actually might have been Punchbowl News, but that the Senate's going to flip and the House, they're both going to flip. So it'll be Democrats in the House and Republicans in the Senate. Ohio and Montana will flip, and I think they're presuming that Cruz and Scott keep their seats as well. So
I mean, this is a great map. This is the best map Republicans are going to have for a while. I mean, all these
yeah,
races are kind of chip shots with weak incumbents. I haven't heard about Ohio. I mean, Trump is going to win Ohio by 8 or 9 votes, or 8 or 9%. That's still really doable if you're Brown. And again, I've won races with Specter and D'Amato and other candidates where we've run 10 plus points ahead of the presidential ticket, and it's doable if you run a good campaign.
As far as Sherrod Brown's reputation in Ohio goes, has he kind of been a traditional blue dog Democrat where he's moderate enough to maintain some sort of in a red state? Or
no, he's got a really liberal voting record, but his kind of body language spin is kind of populist, working class. I mean, he breaks with enough stuff, but kind of like Ryan, who I thought was a great candidate too.
I agree.
But they're kind of the same kind of candidate that, if they weren't in a very red state, they would be in the U.S. Senate. I think Brown hangs on simply because Marino it's a straight party line vote for him. I mean, he hasn't made a case for himself, and that may be enough. I mean, if you're in New York State, that's enough. I mean, if you're in New Jersey, Andy Kim, that's enough. I mean, it's
okay. You brought up New York State, so let's say they both flip, or let's say the Senate flips potentially. Mm-hmm. What about Anthony D'Esposito? It looks like I'm guessing he loses his seat. If you look at the current polling for actually it's not really current. The last poll for his race, he's down 3% to Dumel or whatever the guy's name, Drummel or whatever. It was revealed this week that he put his mistress and her daughter, I assume it's a she, could be a he, but I assume it's a she, on his congressional payroll. Have you seen this?
No,
bubbling.
I'll act shocked.
Yeah. Pretend like. Well, the funny thing is, I feel like I want to give you this guy's Wikipedia. Do you know anything about Esposito?
No.
D'Esposito? So he was a cop, NYPD, retired early, was recommended to be charged for an improper search. I guess I saw somebody said his dad got him appointed as a councilman on the Hempstead, New York City Council. And then he did win a full term after that. And then he won last cycle, 2022. We actually had that race in our first contests. And the guy that he beat, it's Gillen. What did I say? Dremel. It's Gillen. He won that, but he's running against him again. Are you following this race at all? You think this is going to be one of the ones that helps flip the House?
It could flip the House. It's one of the ones in play. I'm not working on that race.
Do you believe that the House is going to flip? That there's enough Democrat?
No, I don't think it will. I don't think it will.
Okay.
And I think what's going to hurt in New York is how unpopular Hochul is. With the latest piece with congestion pricing, and her being all over the place on congestion pricing, she's done everything to piss everybody off.
Right.
And I think she weights down Democrats in New York because you've got a severe wrong direction in the state with a severe wrong direction nationally, and so you vote for the other guys. Here's what I do think. I do think that if Harris kind of explodes out a little bit in the next month, you will get both a Republican Senate and a Republican House.
As a counter to her.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say that if Trump explodes out, you're going to get a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate because literally we need these guys to watch those guys.
Interesting.
I think that if one of the candidates pops, presidential candidates pops,
Yeah.
I think all bets are off. By the way, we got to talk, but we got to spend at least a couple minutes talking about RFK Jr. and Olivia Nuzzi.
It's on the okay. Let's jump into that one.
Holy
I
fuck.
saw a great tweet that had like that really shitty. He looks like he's drunk. I'm sure he's not. He actually looks like he's been holding his breath for 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That really shitty picture.
Where he's like this,
and it was on Twitter. Exactly. Well, no, they said what? I think she's like 36 or something. It was like,
it's so bizarre. I mean, let's face it, she's hot. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, and I mean, especially as political reporters go, she's, A-list hot.
Right.
And and she's also I think a good reporter. I mean, she can write well. I mean, her career has always been controversial. Even starting out, and she was always played kind of fast and loose with the social media game and with, relationships and stuff. But like, and now RFK trying to paint her as a stalker. Yes, this beautiful young woman, like I have that problem too. Women 40 years younger than me keep sending me nude photos. It's horrible.
Yeah,
right?
I can't laugh at him. I mean, I can relate. You have no idea how many gorgeous women just will not leave me alone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like not talking about porn bots, but like people It's like, so Charlize, if you're listening to this, please stop sending me those risque photos of you at 2 a.m. Oh, whoa, my moral conundrum with what to do.
You know what's funny about this is when RFK picked Shanahan as his running mate, we joked how long until until his wife, who doesn't deserve to be dragged through the mud with him on this, but until she finds until she finds out about his current philandering with Nicole Shanahan. We were wrong. It could have been with her as well. The only one that came to light was this other one. Were we wrong, or do you think there's going to be more to hit the stage?
I think there'll be more to hit the stage because she's going to have to protect herself at some point. I mean,
yeah.
And because, they're clearly smearing her. And, if you're a serial philanderer, apparently it's in, mid double digits. His philandering was in mid double digits. So if you're that person and you're trying to smear her, and again, who the hell knows? I mean, I hope there's a court case, and I hope all the text and emails are released because I'm putting away whatever I'm doing that day and just reading that shit. That's what I'll spend my whole day doing, because it's like, because let's face it, Kennedy, I mean, he's got game. I have a friend of mine in London, and he used to be special branch, I guess. And he used to tell me about like the royal family, and because one of his assignments was the royal family, and he told crazy stories. And he said, when the boys go out, when they were in their teens and early 20s going out to a club, it's like women in the club, when they could see potentially HRH in your fucking name, it's like, I joke that's got to be the ultimate panty remover, right? HRH. You think you could get that in your name?
Yeah, there is maybe even from the year 2000, there is a Dave Chappelle special in Washington, D.C. And he's talking about Bill Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Have you ever seen this special? If you watch nothing else but just this clip of it, he says, his words are, I have dreamed of being famous, but I never understood how famous the president was. He was like, imagine being so famous, someone can suck your dick and they're famous because of it. He was like, think of that line. He's like, you could go up to a woman and say, hey, suck my dick. There's a future in it for you. It's like, the level of fame is so true. And I think that even pales in comparison to being royalty and saying, hey, I can make you queen. You know what I mean? You could be queen for a day.
I had a friend, acquaintance, and he dated one of the members of the royal family, not a direct, but like one removed,
Yeah.
but but somebody you always see. She was a duchess, and but like so
Mm.
she was close family. So she's at all the funerals and all the weddings and stuff like that. And he dated her for a while, and he said that it's really intoxicating because it's the greatest red carpet ever. And even if you go like out of the country to Monaco or something, somebody says you're fucking royalty, and it's just like,
Totally.
but he said the level of dysfunction and crazy, he said, was like
No, for
you
sure.
couldn't live. You couldn't. He said you couldn't live like that and not lose your mind. There would have to be something
Yeah.
wrong with you at some point. I'd be
Right,
willing
right,
to
right.
risk it, by the way. That's
Yeah, why not? There was also a comedian that said, of course they're crazy. Look at their family tree and all the inbreeding. You know what I mean? It's like they don't marry outside of aristocracy. That's the gene pool isn't that wide.
yeah.
Um,
There's one of the Habsburgs is on Twitter, and
oh,
people are always making jokes about the fucking chin, and he's pretty good with it. And he's like, yeah, I haven't heard that before, right? But it's like he can't post anything. If you post about like, you know, I had a great hamburger at Applebee's, and they'll say, yeah, did your chin get in the way? It's that kind of
it's like he should just dedicate a Twitter channel to his chin.
chin, right? Right. It's
All
like
right, so let's wrap.
Jesus, yeah.
I was just gonna say this is fun. Let's wrap it up. Have you seen? You know who Corey DeAngelis is? I mean, by the way, this is going to be just another North Carolina story. I really need your input on what's happening in North
I know
Carolina,
the
but
name Corey DeAngelis, but I'm drawing a blank.
he's an evangelical, anti-LGBTQ supporter of school choice, and he's specifically supporting North Carolina Trisha Cotham. It was revealed this week that was also the he was also the gay porn star named Seth Rose. I don't know. You just can't make this shit up.
I like you used a Jewish name, by the way, but go ahead. Right?
Well, he didn't want to break the covenant. Here's what gets me actually. Do yourself a favor, type in his name. His name is, and everybody watching should do this, Corey DeAngelis. He has photos with a gorgeous woman, a good-looking woman in Italy. I assume is his girlfriend, fiance, wife, potentially whatever. She had a ring on her finger. And I thought to myself, this is the only question. I give a shit less about any of the other stuff. My question is about their relationship. A, is she like, because he seems to position himself as this evangelical, anti-LGBTQ alpha male looking for a trad wife, blah, blah, blah. Did she think she was getting like a traditional alpha male only to find out now that she actually got a bottom?
Oh, he was a
Or
bottom? Fuck.
I don't know. I made that part up.
We can say that. I'm willing to go down that. Yeah.
Yeah. For legal reasons, I'm gonna say alleged bottom.
Alleged bottom. All right.
Yeah. Or was she like perfectly okay with it, which is fine. That's cool. You're down with your guy making money that way. I don't give a shit. That's the real question. I feel like investigative journalists need to be. I don't care about his school choice views. What, are gay porn actors not allowed to have views on school choice?
Yeah,
Tell me you're looking him up right now.
For Corey DeAngelis. I mean, I'm looking for the wife or the girlfriend. I mean,
okay. So by the way, his name Corey is Corey.
Yeah.
And then D, and then Angelis IS at the end.
Is that the wife, the girlfriend?
No.
Okay, it's somebody else.
Maybe.
My apologies to
I'm gonna have to say. Maybe it is. I can't really. But I'll have to send it to you. They were on a beach, so she was, and they were in Rome as well. And she actually, if you look at the Rome photo, she has a tattoo on her ankle. So I was thinking, oh, maybe she's mixing it up a little bit. So anyway,
I've known candidates, and trust me, there's more than one in the Capitol building that are gay and have convenient spouses of both sexes.
Yeah.
And
right.
I think that's kind of a shame. But
it's definitely a waste of talent if she's hot.
Yeah, well, I was saying this, but I think it's a shame that somebody needs to hide their sexuality. At the same time, it's none of my fucking business. If you're putting her on the payroll, it is kind of my business. I mean, famously in Wisconsin, we were talking about Wisconsin earlier. There was a congressman named Steve Gunderson from a very rural agricultural area, and they used to call him the Dairy Fairy. And everybody knew he was gay. I mean, everybody in Congress knew he was gay, and he had a significant other that he used to show up with, and that was living with him, and even his constituents knew he was gay. And it was one of this kind of things, but they liked him. They thought he did a good job. He was a hard worker, and and I think that's great. And if somebody wants to keep their private life private, this isn't,
none of my business.
None of my business. I mean, it's again, if you want to put your spouse on the payroll, then it becomes the public's business. But or your
100%.
girlfriend, and frankly, if your girlfriend or boyfriend happens to be on the public payroll, on your payroll, you should be smart enough to find some fucking other place to put them.
Right.
Hire my friend, like at the lobbying firm that you're doing all this business with. I mean, that's kind of a time-honored thing. But it's like, but if that does become a relationship, and sometimes relationships start, you're probably committing a crime. But B, move on. Like, go to some other place. I mean, it's not that hard, but you see it in business too. I mean, you see it all the time.
Okay, so this actually wasn't on the list, but I saw this week that there was a story that the Trump campaign gave $250,000 to the log cabin Republicans, who gave the $250,000 to whatever her name is, the wife, Melania, for a campaign speech. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on why the Trump campaign would have to pay his wife to do a campaign speech? Let's say allegedly, by the way, because
allegedly. Allegedly. I mean, it depends what it was, and what I will tell you is that big events are fucking crazy expensive. I mean, I don't know if she's going to give a speech before 100 people, because that's one thing. But if
there's video of it, there's probably like 100 people in a room.
Then it sounds like bullshit to me. I mean, if it's a couple thousand people, it shouldn't cost $250,000, but it's not going to be a couple hundred, or $250,000, but it's not going to be insignificant either, because of venue, security, and travel. And
do you remember Susanna Gibson, who was running for state delegate in Virginia? And we talked about her. The RNC, or the Republican Party, mailed out. Her and her husband had done chatterbait to make money. They had sex on camera. That's what first thing I thought of with this. What's his name? Seth Rose, the actor known as Seth Rose. That was the first thing I thought about. Was
that was that Virginia thing. She almost won, but it was such But it was such a bizarre thing, because it's like, my privacy has been invaded. You were soliciting tips to have anal on camera. Your privacy is fucking gone. I mean, it's like, your private. No,
but she didn't solicit them from me. That was her point.
That ship has fucking sailed. It was a public channel that was up on, wherever. It was like,
half the internet has seen your razor burn, lady. Let it go.
Yeah, let it go. Right? Yeah. Vapors. But if this guy, if this guy's a power bottom, that's going to be out in 20 fucking seconds.
And honestly, somebody said, because he had support from some national organization and they withdrew it. And somebody said on Twitter, oh, he did all these other things, but you still support him. But now you don't support him because he's gay. And I was like, not every gay adult film star is gay. You're making a huge presumption. He's with this woman, like, he might not be gay.
Right. I mean, maybe he's straight. Maybe he's. Who the fuck knows? I mean,
who knows, right?
Like, And again, you could have. I mean, I know. I mean, friends that are gay and are very conservative. Of
course.
And even being gay, I'm talking pre-gay marriage, and they were kind of legally bound, or civil ceremony. They make the very conservative argument that why should the government determine who I can love? And which is a fairly libertarian, classical liberal argument, and that's where they would fall to kind of get rid of the dissonance. But but it's like, anyway. All right, we should
Log
wrap it up.
cabin Republicans, right?
Yeah, famously.
All right, that's it. We put it in there. I think we got all the important news of the day, and see you in a week. There'll be some more votes happening, and see where we pan out in the next week.
Sounds good, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. There it is. We have another one in the can. What are the big takeaways from today? I don't really know. I think we definitely can start with Mr. Rose. Actually, his name's not Rose. What was it? DeAngelis. Corey DeAngelis, also known as Seth Rose. I actually am extremely curious what that relationship is like. Not because it's any of my business, but because I'm more so interested in people's lives. And they were actually they were on like the Amalfi Coast. Anyway, go to Twitter, you can see it. But don't be mean. I don't want to like send an army of people to go bash this guy. He's got, again, like I said, even a gay porn star can have views on school choice, whether or not I agree or disagree with them. One thing we did not cover today, and I'd like to throw this out to our audience. There's reporting now that the Black and Hispanic vote categories, broad categories with many diverse viewpoints of people, but that those two categories are growing in support for Trump, even since 2020. I'd love to throw out to you why you think that is. It's something that I don't think anybody really has the answer for. It does break down by more so by like gender and age. So there's a kind of a difference there. So you'd have to look at different demographics. But what are your takes on that? What are the reasons behind why those demographics are shifting? All right. Like I say, it was great to have you with us. If you like the show, please like, subscribe, share, and leave us a comment. All right. Have a good one. See you in a week. Bye.
Draft in the Senate, game on the floor. Campaign slogans echo final scores. Analysis deep as the trench warfare set. We break it down, no sweat, no net. Highlights and touchdowns, where's your bet? Candidate playbooks, lines we set. Irreverent and free, we call it out. Competition fierce, ain't no doubt. And a Hail Mary pass. Legislation touchdowns, who's top class? Elections heated, brackets tight. Political fantasy, bring the night. Cynical plays and cynical ploys. Draft your politicians, trade your boys.